Raja Yoga by Swami Vivekananda. Chapter 4 The Psychic Prana. According to the yogis, there are two nerve currents in the spinal column called Pingalala and Ida, and there is a hollow canal called Susumna running through the spinal cord. At the lower end of the hollow canal is what the yogis call the lotus of the Kundalini. They describe it as a triangular in form in which in the symbolical language of the yogis, there is a power called the Kundalini coiled up. When that Kundalini awakes, it tries to force a passage through this hollow canal, and as it rises step by step, as it were, layer after layer of the mind becomes open, all these different visions and wonderful powers come to the yogi. When it reaches the brain, the yogi is perfectly detached from the body and mind. The soul finds itself free. We know that the spinal cord is composed in a peculiar manner. If we take the figure 8 horizontally, there are two parts, and these two parts are connected in the middle. Suppose you add 8 after 8 piled one on top of the other, that will represent the spinal cord. The left is the Ida and the right the Pingala. And that hollow canal which runs through the center of the spinal cord is the Susumna. When the spinal cord ends in some of the lumbar vertebrae, a fine fiber comes down and the canal is even in that fiber, only much finer. The canal is closed at the lower end, which is situated near what is called the sacral plexus, which according to modern physiology is triangular in form. The different plexuses that have the centers in the spinal cord can very well stand for the different lotuses of the yogi. The yogi conceives of several centers, beginning with the Muladhara, the basic, and ending with the Shashahasra, the 1,000 petal lotus in the brain. So, if we take these different plexuses as representing circles, the idea of the yogi can be understood very easily in the language of modern physiology. We know there are two sorts of actions in these nerve currents, one afferent and the other efferent, one sensory and the other motor, one centripetal and the other centrifugal. One carries the sensations to the brain and the other from the brain to the outer body. These vibrations are all connected with the brain in the long run. Several other facts we have to remember in order to clear the way for the expansion which is to come. The spinal cord at the brain ends in a sort of bulb in the medulla, which is not attached to the bone but floats in a fluid in the brain, so that if there be a blow on the head, the force of that blow will be dissipated in the fluid and will not hurt the bulb. This will be an important fact as we go on. Secondly, we have also to note that of all the centers, we have particularly to remember three: the Muladhara, the basis, the Sahasrara, the 1,000 petal lotus of the brain, and the Swadhisthana, next above the Muladhara. Next, we will take one fact from physics. We all hear of electricity and various other forces connected with it. What electricity is, no one knows, but so far as it is known, it is a sort of motion. There are various other motions in the universe. What is the difference between them and electricity? Suppose this table moves and the molecules which compose this table is moving in different directions. If they have all made to move in the same directions, it will be electricity. Electric motion is when the molecules all move in the same direction. If all the air molecules in a room are made to move in the same direction, it will make a gigantic battery of electricity of the room. Another point from physiology, we must remember that the center which regulates the respiratory system, the breathing system, has a sort of controlling action over the system of nerve currents, and the controlling center of the respiratory system to compose the thorax and the spinal column. This center regulates the respiratory organs and also exercises some control over the secondary centers. Now we shall see why breathing is practiced. In the first place, from rhythmical breathing will come a tendency for the molecules in the body to have the same direction. When mind changes into will, the current changes into motion similar to electricity, because the nerves have been proved to show polarity and action of electric currents. This shows that when we will evolve into the nerve currents, it is changing to something like electricity. When all the motions of the body have become perfectly rhythmical, the body has, as it were, become a gigantic battery of will. This tremendous will is exactly what the yogi wants. This is therefore a physiological expression of the breathing exercise. It tends to bring a rhythmic action in the body and helps us to the respiratory center to control the other centers. The aim of pranayama is to raise the coiled up power in the muladhara called the kundalini. Everything that we see or imagine or dream, we have to perceive in space. This is the ordinary space called the mahakasa, great space. When a yogi reads the thoughts of the other man who perceives those sensuous objects, he sees them in anasuta space called the chittakasha, mental space. When perception has become objectless and the soul shines in its own nature, it is called chirakasa or knowledge space. When the kundalini is aroused and enters the canal of the susumna, all the perceptions are in the mental space. When it has reached the end of the canal which opens out into the brain, the objectless of perceptions is in the knowledge space. Taking the analogy of electricity, we find that man can send a current only along a wire, but nature requires no wires to send her tremendous currents. This proves that the wire is not really necessary, but that only our inability to dispense with it compels us to use it. Similarly, all the sensations and motions of the body are being sent into the brain and sent out of it through these wires of nerve fibers. One of the sensory and motor fibers in spinal cord are the Ida and Pingala of the yogis. They are the main channels through which the afferent and efferent currents are traveling. But why should not the minds and the news without any wire react without any wires? We see that this is being done only in nature. The yogi says, if you can do that, you have got rid of the bondage of matter. How to do it? If you can make the current pass through the susumna, the canal in the middle of the spinal column, you have solved the problem. The mind has this network of the nervous system and has to break it so that no wires will be required to work through. Then alone will all knowledge come to us. No more bondage of body. That is why it's so important that you should get control of the susumna. If you can send the mental current through that hollow canal without any effort to act as wires, the yogi says that will solve the problem, and he also says it can be done. The susumna is in ordinary persons close up at the lower extremity, no action comes to it. The yoga proposes a practice by which it can be opened and nerve currents made to travel through. When sensation is carried to center, the center reacts. This reaction in the case of automatic centers is followed by no motion. In the case of conscious centers, it is followed first by perception and secondly by motion. All perception is the reaction to action from outside. How then do perceptions in dreams arise? There is then no action from outside. The sensory motions, therefore, are coiled up somewhere, just as the motor motions are known to be in different centers. For instance, I see a city. Perception of that city first from the reaction to the sensation brought from outside objects comprising the city. That is to say, a certain motion in the brain molecules has been set up by the motion in the incarring nerves, which again was certain motion with the objects in the city. Now, even after a long time, I can remember the city. This memory is exactly the same phenomenon, only it is in a milder form. But when since the action that set up even the milder form of similar vibrations in the brain, not certainly from the primary sensations. Therefore, it must be that the sensations are coiled up somewhere, and they, by their acting, bring out the mild reaction which we call dream perception. Now, the center where all these residual sensations are, as it were, stored up, is called the muladhara, the root receptacle, and the coiled up energy of action is kundalini, the coiled up. It is very probable that the residual motor energy is also stored up in the same center as after deep study or meditation on external objects, the part of the body with the Muladhara center situated. Probably the sacral plexus gets heated. Now, if this coiled up energy be roused and made active and then consciously made to travel up the Susumna canal, a tremendous reaction will set up and set in. When a minute portion of the energy of action travels along a nerve fiber and causes reaction from centers, the perception is that the dream or imagination. But when the vast mass of this energy stored up in the power of long internal meditation travels along the susumna and strikes the center, the reaction is tremendous. It means superior to the reaction of dream or imagination, immensely more intense than the reaction of sense perception. It is supersensuous perception, and the mind in that state is called superconscious. And when it reaches the metropolis of all sensation, the whole brain as it were reacts, and every perceived molecule in the body as it were reacts, and the result is the full blaze of illumination, the perception of the self. As this Kundalini force travels from center to layer, layer after layer of the mind, as it were, will be opened up, and this universe will be perceived by the yogi in its final post form. Then alone the cause of this universe, both a sensation and reaction, will be known as they are, and hence will become all knowledge. The causes being known, the knowledge of the effects is sure to follow. Thus, arousing of the Kundalini is the one and only way to attaining divine wisdom and superconscious perception and realization of the Spirit. It may come in various ways: through love for God, through the mercy of perfected sages, or through the power of the analytic will of the philosopher. Wherever there is a manifestation of what is ordinarily called supernatural power of wisdom, there must have been a little current of Kundalini which found its way into the Susumna. Only in the vast majority of such cases of supernaturalism, they had ignorantly stumbled up onto some practice which set free a minute portion of the coil of Kundalini. All worship, consciously or unconsciously, leads to the sin. The man who thinks that he is receiving responses to his prayers does not know that the fulfillment came only from his own nature, that he has succeeded by the mental attitude of prayer in waking up a bit of the infinite power which is coiled up within himself, whom thus men ignorantly worship under various names. Through fear and tribulation, the yogi declares to the world to be the real power coiled up in every being, the mother of eternal happiness, if we know how to approach her. And Raja Yoga is the science of religion, the rationality of all worship, all prayers, forms, ceremonies, and miracles.